I'll never forget the sound of that axe hitting my front door. Wham! 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 Red emergency lights were pulsing through the living room sheer curtains like a heartbeat gone wrong. The whole neighborhood was out on their lawns, watching in their bathrobes and slippers. My boy, Daniel, the youngest fire chief in county history, was leading the charge. He thought he was saving his mama's house from a terrible fire. He was screaming orders, his face streaked with soot and sweat, desperate to get inside. Bless his heart, he didn't know. He didn't know he wasn't fighting a fire. He was about to walk into the devil's own bedroom. And what he found in there? Honey, it wasn't smoke. It was the kind of shame that sticks to a family name forever. The kind of shame you can't wash off with soap and water. 2 naked bodies, tangled up in my Egyptian cotton sheets, screaming blue murder because they couldn't pull apart. My husband of 40 years and his own son's wife. Stuck together. Literally. Like dogs in the street. But before we get to the sirens and the screaming, we have to go back. We have to go back to when the house was quiet, to when the lies were just whispers in the dark. Hello, dear listeners. Come on in. Pull up a rocking chair on the front porch. The evening air is nice and cool tonight. It's Auntie Clara here. Thank you for joining me. This story, well, this one sits heavy on my chest, like a wet wool blanket. It's a story about love, yes.
But mostly, it's a story about how blind a woman can be when she wants to believe everything is all right. Before I begin properly, I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel and left a comment writing which state or country you are listening from. It always warms my heart to see how far our stories travel. Grab your coffee, or maybe something stronger, honey. You're going to need it. Enjoy listening. You know, 40 years isn't just a number, sweetie. It's a lifetime. It's a whole history book written in the lines of your face and the calluses on your hands. For me, those 40 years were spent building 2 things, my family and my bakery, Juliet's Oven. I started that bakery when my Daniel was just a baby, barely knee-high to a grasshopper. I remember the day we opened. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. I had one oven that rattled when it got too hot, and a counter Julian had built out of reclaimed wood he found at a salvage yard. But oh, the smell of yeast rising at 4 in the morning, the scent of Madagascar vanilla and cinnamon drifting out onto Main Street. That was the smell of hope. Every morning for 4 decades, my alarm went off at 3 a.m. While the rest of the world was tucked in tight, dreaming their dreams, I was there, flour on my apron, kneading dough until my knuckles ached. That business put clothes on our backs. It put braces on Daniel's teeth.
It paid for his college tuition so he could become the fine man he is today. And it paid for the very roof over our heads, the big Victorian house on Elm Street that I loved more than anything. I thought we were happy. My husband, Julian, bless his heart, or at least the heart I thought he had. When we were young, he used to look at me like I hung the moon and the stars just for him. He was a handsome man, tall with broad shoulders and a way of talking that could charm the birds right out of the trees. He wasn't a baker. No, he was in sales, which meant he talked for a living. He liked the suits, the shiny cars, the image of success. I was the engine in the back room, covered in flour, He was the shiny paint job out front. But lately, the house had grown quiet. It wasn't a peaceful quiet like a library. It was a heavy quiet, the kind that presses on your ears. It was like living with a polite ghost. Julian was always working late. That's the oldest excuse in the book, isn't it? But when you've been married 40 years, you don't want to be the jealous wife. You don't want to be the nag. So you swallow it. He'd come home past midnight, his tie loosened, his eyes avoiding mine. "Big account, Juliet," he'd say, pouring himself a drink without even asking how my day was. Just a big account. Very stressful. But when he came to bed, he wouldn't touch me. He'd stay on his edge of the mattress, back turned, a wall of ice between us. If I reached out to put a hand on his shoulder, he'd flinch, like my touch burned him. "I'm tired, Juliet," he'd mumble. "Just let me sleep." And then there was the smell. You know, when you live with a man that long, you know his scent better than your own. You know the smell of his shaving cream, his deodorant, the stale coffee on his breath. But Julian started coming home smelling sweet. Not like the bakery. No, this was a cloying, artificial sweetness, like cheap gardenias and desperation. He said it was the air freshener in the office. He said it was the new soap they used at the gym. I wanted to believe him. Lord knows I wanted to believe him. Because if I didn't believe him, I'd have to look at the other option. And the other option was too terrible to name. And then there was Allison. My Daniel brought her home 5 years ago. She was a slip of a thing, pretty in a sharp sort of way, with big eyes and a smile that she could turn on and off like a light switch. She worked as a receptionist at a law firm downtown. Daniel was head over heels for her. He looked at her the way Julian used to look at me. I welcomed that girl with open arms. I wanted a daughter so badly. I never had girls of my own, just my Daniel. So when Allison came along, I thought, finally, someone to pass the recipes down to. I taught her my grandmother's sourdough starter secret. I showed her how to fold the butter into the croissanto so it flakes just right.
When she said she was tired of her job at the law firm, I let her handle the bookkeeping for the bakery. "I want to help the family business, Mom," she'd say, blinking those big lashes. "You work too hard. Let me handle the numbers." It seemed like a blessing. I could focus on the baking, and she could handle the invoices and the taxes. But looking back, honey, hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? I should have seen the signs. Allison started coming over to the house a lot, even when Daniel was on a 24-hour shift at the fire station. She'd come by just to check on us. "I brought Julian's favorite wine," she'd say, breezing through the door in a dress that was a little too short, a little too tight for a Tuesday night visit to her in-laws. She'd sit in the living room with Julian, laughing at his jokes, loud, tinkling laughter that echoed through the house, while I was in the kitchen, washing up the dinner dishes. I'd hear them in there, their voices low, intimate. "Oh, Dad, you're so funny," she'd say. She always called him Dad, but she didn't say it like a daughter. She said it with a purr. I remember one night specifically. It was about 3 months before the fire. We were having a Sunday roast. Daniel was there, exhausted from a long week of fighting wildfires out west. He was eating quietly, grateful for a home-cooked meal. Allison was sitting across from Julian. I brought out the pecan pie, Julian's favorite. "Here you go," I said, placing a slice in front of my husband. He didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on Allison. She was licking a bit of gravy off her thumb. It was such a small thing, but the way Julian watched her, it was hungry. It was the look of a starving man looking at a feast. And Allison, she saw him looking, and she smiled. A small, secret smile that didn't reach her eyes. She ran her foot up the leg of the table. I felt the vibration through the floorboards. I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly against the china. "Mom, you okay?" Daniel asked, looking up, startled. "I'm fine," I said, my voice trembling just a little. "Just slipped. My hands are tired from kneading dough." Julian finally looked at me then. His eyes were cold, dead. "You're always tired, Juliet," he said. "Maybe you're getting too old for this." The table went silent. Daniel frowned. "Dad, that's not nice. Mom works harder than anyone I know." "I'm just saying," Julian shrugged, taking a sip of his wine.
"Everyone has an expiration date. Maybe the bakery does too." Allison giggled. She actually giggled. "Oh, Dad, don't be mean. Mom tries her best." Mom tries her best. It sounded like a compliment, didn't it? But the tone, it was patronizing, like you'd speak to a child who drew a clumsy picture. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fans spinning round and round, I felt the first real crack in my foundation. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a knowing, a deep, sick knowing in the pit of my stomach. Something was wrong, rotting, but I denied it. I told myself I was being a crazy old woman. Julian was 70 years old, for heaven's sake. Allison was 30. It was impossible. It was disgusting. It was unnatural. So I kept baking. I kept waking up at 3 a.m. I kept signing the checks Allison put in front of me without reading them too closely, because I trusted family. But the universe, honey, it has a way of forcing you to see the truth, whether you want to or not. It started with the phone calls. Julian had always been hopeless with technology. He could barely turn on the television remote. But suddenly, he had a passcode on his phone. He took it everywhere with him, to the bathroom, to the garage, even when he went to get the mail. If I walked into the room while he was typing, he'd flip the screen over so fast it would make your head spin. "Who are you talking to, honey?" I asked one evening. "Just work," he snapped. "Why are you always snooping, Juliet? It's unattractive." "Snooping? I was standing in my own living room." Then came the receipts. I was doing the laundry because Julian refused to touch a washing machine, and I checked his pockets. I always checked his pockets. Habit. I pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his trousers, a receipt from the Gilded Steakhouse in the city. $200 for a Tuesday lunch, 2 filet mignons, a bottle of expensive Cabernet, and a slice of cheesecake to share. Julian had told me he was at the dentist that day. He said he had a root canal. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, smelling the faint scent of that cloying, sweet perfume lingering on the fabric of his trousers. A root canal, with steak and wine. I folded the receipt and put it in my apron pocket. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to know who was sitting across from him sharing that cheesecake. The final straw, the thing that broke the camel's back, happened a week later. It was raining. A cold, miserable rain that rattled the windows. Julian had come home early, which was rare. He said he had a headache. He went straight up to bed. I was downstairs, cleaning the kitchen counters, when I saw his phone sitting on the side table by the recliner. He'd forgotten it. It buzzed. I froze. I looked at the stairs. No sound. He was asleep, or pretending to be. I walked over to the phone.
My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The screen was lit up, a new email notification. Now, Julian never used email. He barely knew how. He always made me send his messages for him. But there it was, a notification from an address that was just a jumble of letters, but the subject line made my blood run cold. You were incredible tonight, Dad. Heart. Dad, with a red heart emoji. I felt like someone had punched me in the throat. The room spun. I had to grab the back of the recliner to keep from falling over. Dad. There was only one person in the world who called him that, other than our son. I swiped the screen, desperate to see more, but it was locked. I tried his birthday, 1955. Locked. I tried our anniversary. Locked. Then, on a hunch that made me want to vomit, I typed in Allison's birthday. Click. The phone unlocked. I didn't have time to look through everything. I heard floorboards creaking upstairs. He was waking up. But I saw enough. I saw the email app open. I saw a thread of messages, not just one. Hundreds. Can't wait to see you. Is the old witch asleep? I miss your hands. And photos. Tiny thumbnails of photos that I couldn't bring myself to click on because I just knew they would burn my eyes out. I locked the phone and put it back exactly where it was. I went back to the kitchen sink and plunged my hands into the hot, soapy water. I scrubbed a plate until I thought it would break.
My husband. And my daughter-in-law. The betrayal was so fast, so heavy, I couldn't process it. It wasn't just cheating. It was incestuous. It was predatory. It was stealing my son's life while smiling in his face. I looked out the window at the rain falling on the dark street. I saw my reflection in the glass. An old woman, tired eyes, gray hair. A woman who had given everything to everyone else. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't a scream. It was a quiet, steel snap, like a lock clicking into place. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. If they wanted to play games, if they wanted to treat me like a foolish old woman, then I would show them exactly what this old woman was capable of. I dried my hands. I walked up the stairs, past the bedroom where my husband was sleeping the sleep of the wicked. I went into the guest room, sat at the little desk, and opened the phone book. I looked for the number Mrs. Miller had given me years ago, a private investigator. Thomas Vance, the ad said. Discreet, reliable, results. I wrote the number down on the back of the laundry receipt. The tears were gone. My hands were steady. Because, honey, you don't mess with a baker. We know how to handle the heat. And we know exactly how long to let things cook before they're ready to be served. And let me tell you, I was about to cook up something they would never, ever forget.
The sun came up the next morning just like it always did. Isn't that the strangest thing about tragedy? The world keeps turning, the birds keep singing, the milkman still drops off the bottles on the porch step. But inside your house, inside your chest, everything has stopped. Welcome back to the porch, honey. Sit down. I hope you've got your coffee, because the road gets rocky from here. I didn't sleep a wink that night after seeing that email on Julian's phone. I lay there in the dark, listening to him snore, a rhythmic, rasping sound that used to comfort me, used to tell me I wasn't alone. Now, it sounded like a growl. It sounded like a wild animal sleeping in my bed, wearing my husband's skin. When the alarm went off at 5 a.m., I let myself sleep in a bit, or at least pretend to. I got up and went through the motions. I put on my robe. I went to the kitchen. I started the coffee pot. The smell of brewing coffee usually wakes up my soul. That morning, it just made me nauseous. Julian came down 20 minutes later. He looked refreshed. He looked like a man who had slept the sleep of the just. He kissed me on the cheek, a peck, dry, impersonal. "Good morning, Juliet," he said, reaching for a mug. "Did you sleep well?" I looked at him. I really looked at him. I looked for the man I married 40 years ago in a small chapel in Georgia. I looked for the father who held Daniel when he had the chicken pox. I looked for a trace of guilt in his eyes. There was nothing. Just a flat, shiny surface. I slept fine, I lied. My voice was steady. It surprised me how easy it was to lie. I guess when you've been lied to for so long, you learn the language. "You have a busy day?" "Oh, you know," he waved a hand, dismissing me while he checked his watch. "Meetings, clients, the usual grind. I might be late again tonight. Late again." "Take your time," I said, turning back to the stove so he wouldn't see the look on my face. "Don't work too hard." As soon as his car backed out of the driveway, the mask fell off. I collapsed onto the kitchen chair, my legs shaking so hard I couldn't stand. But I didn't have time to fall apart. I had work to do. I waited until 9 a.m., then I dialed the number for Mr. Thomas Vance, the private investigator. His voice was like gravel, rough and low. "Vance Investigations." "Mr. Vance," I said, gripping the phone cord like a lifeline. I need your help. I think my husband is stepping out on me." There was a pause filled with 1,000 unsaid things. He'd heard this story 1,000,000 times before. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. Can you come to my office, or do you want to meet somewhere quiet?" "Somewhere quiet," I whispered. "Please." We met at a park bench near the duck pond, 3 towns over. I wore big sunglasses and a scarf, feeling ridiculous like a character in a bad spy movie. Mr.
Vance was a small man, unassuming, the kind of man you'd pass on the street and never notice. That was his superpower, I suppose. I handed him a manila envelope with Julian's photo, his license plate number, and a list of his late nights. "And there's one more thing," I said, my voice barely audible over the quacking of the ducks. Check into my daughter-in-law, Allison Roberts." Mr. Vance looked up from his notebook. His eyes were sharp, intelligent. He didn't look shocked. He didn't judge. He just nodded slowly. "You suspect she's involved." "I don't suspect," I said, the image of that dad heart email flashing in my mind. "I know. I just need you to prove it. I need pictures. I need dates. I need everything." "I'll get it, Mrs. Roberts," he said, tucking the envelope into his jacket. "Go home. Act normal. Don't change your routine. If they sense you know, they'll go underground. Act normal. Do you know how hard it is to act normal when you're living in a house of cards?" The next 3 days were a torture I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Julian came and went, playing the role of the busy businessman. And Allison came over on Thursday. She breezed in through the back door without knocking, just like she always did. "Mom, I brought you some magazines." She was wearing a sundress, yellow, bright, cheerful yellow. She looked so young, so innocent. She kissed my cheek, and I smelt it.
that perfume. The same cloying, floral scent I had smelled on Julian's clothes. It was stronger on her. It filled my kitchen, suffocating me. "Thanks, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of glass. "How's Daniel?" "Oh, he's working hard," she sighed, hopping up onto the counter, my clean counter, swinging her legs. "You know how he is, always at the fire station. Sometimes I get so lonely in that big house." Lonely. "Well," I said, turning away to vigorously scrub a pot that was already clean. "It's a good thing you have us, isn't it? Family looks out for family." I saw her reflection in the window. She smirked, a tiny, cruel little quirk of her lips. "Yeah," she said, "thank God for family." She stayed for tea. She sat at my table, drinking from my grandmother's china cups, talking about her nails, about the weather, about how she wanted to redecorate their living room. Every word out of her mouth felt like a needle poking my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by her perfectly styled hair and throw her out the door. I wanted to ask her how she could sleep at night knowing she was sleeping with her husband's father. But I didn't. I poured her tea. I nodded. I played the part of the daft, sweet mother-in-law because Mr. Vance had said, "Don't change your routine." That weekend, Julian said he had to go to the office to pick up some files on a Saturday. "I'll just be an hour," he said. As soon as he left, a strange urge came over me.
A feeling like a magnet pulling me toward the garage. Julian's big SUV was gone, but he kept his old sedan in the garage under a tarp. He barely drove it anymore, but sometimes he used it for errands. I walked into the garage. It was cool and smelled of gasoline and dust. I walked over to the sedan. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for a ghost. I opened the passenger door. The interior was pristine, unused. But then I checked the glove compartment of his SUV spot. He had a little organizer on the workbench where he dumped his car things when he cleaned it out. And there it was, tucked behind a bottle of tire shine and some old rags. A tube of personal lubricant. I picked it up. My hand trembled. It was sticky. The cap was loose, crusted with dried residue. I stood there in the silence of the garage, holding that plastic tube, and I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against a workbench. Julian and I, we hadn't been intimate in 10 years. He told me he couldn't. He told me it was his age. He told me his back hurt. His heart wasn't up to it. He had low testosterone. He made me feel like I was the problem, like my body was no longer something a man could want. But he wanted this. He wanted it enough to buy this. And the thought of him using this with her inside this car or in a cheap motel, or God forbid, in my son's house, it was vile. It was the dirtiest thing I had ever held. I wanted to throw it across the room. I wanted to set it on fire. But then a thought occurred to me, a dark, cold thought, a thought that didn't come from the Juliet who baked cookies and knit sweaters. It came from a new Juliet, a Juliet who was being forged in the fire of this betrayal. I looked at the tube, I looked at the brand, I memorized it, and I put it back exactly where I found it. Let them have their fun, I thought, wiping my hands on a rag until my skin turned red. Let them think they're safe. 2 days later, my phone buzzed.
A text from Mr. Vance. I have everything. Meet me. Same place. Noon.
I told the bakery staff I had a dentist appointment. I drove to the park. The ducks were still quacking, oblivious to the fact that my world was about to end officially. Mr. Vance didn't look me in the eye when he handed me the tablet this time. Mrs. Roberts, he said, clearing his throat. It's extensive. I took the tablet. The photos were high resolution, shot with a long lens, but clear as day. Photo 1, Julian and Allison walking out of a motel on the edge of town. His arm was around her waist. Her head was on his shoulder. They looked domestic, comfortable, like a couple who had been together for years. Photo 2, them at a jewelry store. Julian was buying her a bracelet. I recognized that bracelet. Allison had worn it to dinner last Sunday. She told Daniel she bought it for herself with her bonus money. My husband bought it with our retirement savings. But then came the video. I managed to get a directional microphone on them while they were on the balcony of the motel, Mr. Vance said quietly. You need to listen to this. It's not just about the affair. I put the headphones on. I pressed play. The image was shaky, showing them sitting on plastic chairs outside a motel room, drinking wine from plastic cups. Allison's voice came through, tinny but clear. I'm tired of waiting, Julian. Daniel is starting to ask questions about the bank accounts. He noticed a withdrawal. My breath hitched. Julian's voice. Don't worry about Daniel.
He's not smart enough to catch us. I have the power of attorney for the bakery, remember? Juliet signed it years ago in case of emergencies. I'm moving the assets to the offshore account next week. Allison laughed. And the house. I want that house, Julian. I hate living in that fireman's shack with Daniel. I want the Victorian. You'll have it, baby, Julian said, reaching over to stroke her hair. Hair that I had brushed, hair that I had complimented. Once we declare the bakery bankrupt, we'll sell the house to pay the debts, but we'll sell it to the LLC I created. It'll be ours, and Juliet will be left with nothing but her flour sacks.
And Daniel? Allison asked. He's young, Julian scoffed. He'll bounce back, or he won't. I don't care. I just want to be with you. I took the headphones off. I sat there on that park bench, staring at the stagnant water of the pond. They weren't just breaking my heart. They were skinning me alive. They were planning to bankrupt Juliet's oven, my bakery, the business I built from scratch, while Julian sat on the couch watching football, the business that paid for everything. And they were going to steal my house, the house where I raised my son, the house where I planned to grow old. And Julian, my husband, he didn't care about our son. He'll bounce back, or he won't. I don't care. A father who doesn't care about his own son is not a man. He is a monster. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. But inside the sadness was evaporating. The grief was burning off like mist in the morning sun. What was left was something hard, something sharp, like a diamond. I looked at Mr. Vance. Can you make copies of all of this? I asked. My voice sounded different, deeper, calmer. I already have, he said, handing me a flash drive. Mrs. Roberts, you should take this to a lawyer immediately. You can freeze the assets. You can sue them for everything. I took the flash drive and closed my fist around it. It felt warm. Oh, I'll go to a lawyer, Mr. Vance, I said, standing up and smoothing down my skirt. Eventually.
He looked concerned. Ma'am, they are moving money next week. You don't have time. I looked at him, and for the first time in days, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who knows exactly where the bodies are buried because she's digging the graves. "I have time," I said. "I have just enough time." "Mrs. Roberts, what are you going to do?" I put my sunglasses back on. "I'm going to bake a cake, Mr. Vance, and then I'm going to do a little renovation." I drove home with the flash drive burning a hole in my purse. That night, I waited until Julian was asleep. I waited until the house was silent as a tomb. I crept downstairs to the study. Julian kept the filing cabinet locked, but I knew where the key was. It was taped under the bottom drawer of his desk. He wasn't as clever as he thought. I opened the files. The bakery, house deed, tax returns. I started taking pictures with my phone. Every document, every falsified signature. I saw checks signed by Juliet Roberts that I had never touched. I saw transfers to a bank in the Cayman Islands. It was all there, the roadmap of their greed. Then I went to the kitchen. I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by my pots and pans, my rolling pins, my jars of spices. This was my kingdom, and they thought they could just walk in and take it? They thought I was just a sweet, oblivious old lady? Bless their hearts. I remembered the tube of lube in the garage. I remembered Allison's laugh. I remembered Julian saying he didn't care about Daniel. A plan began to form in my mind. It didn't come all at once. It came in layers, like a good pastry. First, the trap. Second, the bait. Third, the humiliation. I didn't just want a divorce. A divorce is a piece of paper. A divorce is a settlement. No, I wanted justice. I wanted biblical justice. I wanted them to be exposed. I wanted them to feel the shame I felt when I held that receipt. I wanted the whole world to see them for what they were. I wanted them stuck. I went to the junk drawer in the kitchen. I dug past the rubber bands and the loose batteries until I found it. A bottle of industrial superglue. Gorilla Grip. The label said, "Bonds in seconds. Permanent." I held it up to the moonlight streaming through the window. "Julian," I whispered to the empty room, "you always said you wanted to be closer to Allison. Well, honey, I'm going to make sure you're inseparable."
They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but anyone who's spent a lifetime in a kitchen knows that the best dishes aren't just served cold. They are prepared with patience. You don't rush a souffle, or it falls flat. You don't rush a sourdough starter, or it won't rise. And you certainly don't rush the destruction of two people who think they've outsmarted you. Welcome back to the porch, honey. The wind is picking up a little, isn't it? Pull your shawl tighter. After I found that bottle of superglue in the junk drawer, a strange calm settled over me. It was the same calm I feel right before the bakery opens for the Christmas rush. The chaos is coming, but I am the eye of the storm. I didn't do it that night. No, that would have been reckless. Julian was still downstairs, pacing, probably texting her. I needed privacy. I needed steady hands. The next morning, Tuesday, was my day off from the bakery. Usually I spend Tuesdays tending to my rose bushes out back. But this Tuesday, I had a different kind of gardening to do. I was weeding out the invasive species that had taken root in my home. Julian left for work at 8 a.m. sharp.
As soon as his car turned the corner, I went to work. I walked into the garage, my steps echoing on the concrete. It was cool and dim. I went straight to the SUV's glove box and retrieved the tube. That vile, sticky little tube. I took it to the utility sink in the back of the garage, where Julian would never look.
I put on a pair of latex gloves, the kind I use when I'm working with hot peppers. The first step was the hardest. I had to empty the remaining lubricant. I squeezed it into the sink, watching the clear gel slide down the drain. It made me sick to my stomach, imagining what they used it for. But I forced myself to watch. I needed that anger. I needed to remember that while I was sleeping alone upstairs, they were using this to facilitate their betrayal. I washed the tube out with hot water and a little bit of vinegar to cut the grease. I dried it with a paper towel, twisting it tight to get all the way to the bottom. Then came the swap. I took the bottle of Gorilla Grip industrial adhesive. This wasn't your kindergarten glue, honey. This was the stuff you use to bond metal to brick. The label had a skull and crossbones warning on the back. Warning, bonds skin instantly. Do not touch. I unscrewed the cap of the empty lube tube. I took a small funnel from my canning supplies, one I vowed never to use for food again, and placed it in the opening. Slowly, carefully, I began to pour. The glue was thick, viscous. It moved like cold molasses. The smell was sharp, acrid, and chemical. But the lube tube had a strong artificial strawberry scent to it that lingered in the plastic. I prayed it would mask the chemical odor of the glue. And even if it didn't, well, folks in the throes of passion aren't exactly stopping to sniff the cork, are they? I filled it right to the brim.
I wiped the threads clean with a Q-tip so the cap wouldn't stick shut before they opened it. That would have ruined everything. I needed it to open easily. I needed it to be inviting. I screwed the cap back on. I gave it a little shake. It sloshed heavily. It felt real. It looked real. I walked back to the SUV and placed it exactly where I had found it, tucked behind the tire shine, angled just so. My heart was hammering a rhythm against my ribs. Trap set, trap set, trap set. But the glue was just the lock. I still needed the key. I needed a reason for them to be together, alone, in my house for a long time. And I needed a way to catch them that they couldn't talk their way out of. That night at dinner, I set the stage. I made Julian's favorite, pot roast with carrots and potatoes. The smell of thyme and slow-cooked beef filled the kitchen. It smelled like a home. It smelled like a lie. Julian sat down, loosening his tie. He was humming a tune, a happy tune. He'd probably just gotten a text from her. "Julian," I said, spooning gravy onto his plate, "I have some news." He looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh, what is it?" "The National Bakers Association," I said, the lie rolling off my tongue like melted butter. "They called me today. There's a last-minute slot open for the expo in Nashville this weekend. They want me to be a guest judge." Nashville was a 4-hour drive, an overnight trip. I watched his face closely. I saw the gears turning.
I saw the moment the realization hit him. An empty house for a whole weekend. He tried to look concerned, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. "Nashville? That's a long drive, Juliet. Are you sure you're up for it?" "It's an honor, Julian," I said, feigning excitement. "But I'd have to leave Thursday morning, and I wouldn't be back until late Friday night, maybe even Saturday morning." He put his fork down and reached across the table to pat my hand. His skin felt cold and dry against mine. "Juliet, you work so hard. You deserve this. You should go, absolutely." He squeezed my hand.
Don't worry about me. I'll hold down the fort here. I'll just catch up on some reading. Watch the game. The game. Yes, he was planning to watch a game, all right. But he didn't know he was going to be the main player, and I was the referee. Thank you, honey, I said, pulling my hand away gently. I knew you'd understand. Wednesday was the day of the final preparations. I needed to make sure they were caught, not just by me. If I walked in on them, they would just deny it, or worse, Julian would get violent. He was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. No, I needed witnesses. I needed the kind of witnesses you couldn't bribe or intimidate. I went to the hardware store 3 towns over. Never shop where you're known, that's rule number 1, and bought a few specific items: a heavy-duty fishing line, a small pulley, and a fresh canister of cooking oil. I also stopped by an electronics store and bought a small, voice-activated digital recorder, the size of a matchbox. When I got home, I waited until Julian was in the shower. I slipped into our bedroom, soon to be their crime scene, and taped the recorder to the back of the headboard. It was hidden completely by the pillows, but close enough to catch every whisper, every moan, every incrimination. I tested it. I whispered from the doorway, "The truth will set you free." I played it back, crystal clear. Then came the hardest part, the part that broke my heart into 1,000 jagged pieces. Daniel came over. My boy, my sweet, brave boy. He stopped by in his truck on his way home from the station. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Hey, Mom," he said, collapsing onto the kitchen stool. "Got any leftovers?" "Always, baby," I said, warming up a plate of pot roast. I watched him eat. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days. "How's Allison?" I asked, turning my back to him to busy myself at the sink. I couldn't look him in the eye when I said her name. Daniel sighed, a heavy, rattling sigh. "I don't know, Mom. She's just distant. She's always working late or going to her mother's house. She says I'm paranoid. She says I'm suffocating her." He pushed his plate away. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I work too much. I'm trying to make captain so we can afford a better house. She hates our place."
I gripped the edge of the sink so hard, my knuckles turned white. "She hates your place because she plans to steal mine, baby." I wanted to turn around and scream. I wanted to tell him everything right then and there. "She's a snake, Daniel. She's sleeping with your father." But I couldn't. If I told him now, he wouldn't believe me without proof, or he'd confront them and they'd lie and gaslight him and make him think he was crazy. Or worse, Julian would accelerate his plan to bankrupt the bakery before we could stop him. I had to let him get hurt. I had to let him walk into the fire so he could see the truth with his own eyes. It was the cruelest thing a mother could do, but it was necessary. Like resetting a broken bone, you have to break it again to make it heal straight. I walked over and hugged him. I wrapped my arms around his broad shoulders and smelled the smoke and sweat on his uniform, the smell of an honest man. "It's going to be okay, Daniel," I whispered into his hair. "I promise you, the truth always comes out. You just keep being the good man I raised." He hugged me back, tight. "Thanks, Mom. You're the only one who makes sense lately." When he left, I sat in the dark kitchen and cried for 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face, stood up, and went to set the trap. The smoke trap. I needed smoke, lots of it, thick, black, panic-inducing smoke. But I couldn't burn the house down. That would just give Julian the insurance money he probably wanted.
I went to the kitchen window, the one right above the stove. I opened it just a crack. I took the skillet, my old cast iron one that I didn't care about anymore. I filled it with cooking oil. Not enough to explode, but enough to create a hell of a smoke cloud once it hit the flash point. I placed it on the back burner. Now, here was the trick. I couldn't be there to turn the knob.
I took the fishing line. I tied one end tightly around the knob of the gas burner. I ran the line up to the small pulley I had screwed into the underside of the cabinet, then across the ceiling, using clear tape to hold it lightly, and out the cracked window. Outside, in the flower bed, I tied the other end of the line to a heavy brick, which I propped up precariously on the ledge of the windowsill. It was a simple mechanism. All I had to do was sneak into the backyard, pull the line to knock the brick off the ledge. The weight of the falling brick would pull the fishing line, which would turn the gas knob to high. The pilot light would ignite the burner. The oil would heat up. Within 10 minutes, it would be smoking like a chimney. It was risky. It was dangerous. But I had tested the tension 3 times before I put the oil in. It worked perfectly. I hit the line as best I could. From a distance, nobody would see a thin, transparent wire. I went to bed that night lying next to Julian, knowing that 20 feet away, a bottle of superglue was waiting in his car and a recorder was waiting in our headboard. "Good night, Juliet," he said, turning his back to me. "Good night, Julian," I replied. "Sleep tight." Thursday morning, D-Day. I woke up at 4 a.m. I packed my bag. I made sure to pack my best black dress, the one I wore to funerals. It felt appropriate. I went into the bedroom to say goodbye to Julian. He was half asleep, groggy.
"I'm leaving now, honey," I said. "Nashville awaits." He opened one eye. "Okay. Drive safe. Call me when you get there." "I will." I leaned down and kissed his forehead. It was cold. "I love you, Julian," I said. And I meant it. I loved the man he used to be. I was saying goodbye to that man. The man in the bed, he was a stranger. And I was about to introduce him to a world of hurt. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove away. But I didn't go to Nashville. I drove 3 blocks over to Mrs. Peterson's house. She was an old widow, a bit of a gossip, but loyal as a dog. I had told her a half-truth. I told her I suspected Julian was having a midlife crisis and buying a sports car, and I needed to spy on him to stop him from spending our savings. "You can park in my garage, Juliet," she had whispered conspiratorially. "He'll never see you." I parked my car. I walked back towards my house through the back alleys, wearing a hoodie and dark glasses. I settled into the dense shrubbery of the park across the street from my house. I had a thermos of coffee, my phone, and a pair of binoculars. I felt like a hunter in a deer stand. The wait was agonizing. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Neighbors walked their dogs. The mailman came and went. Then, at 10:15 a.m., a taxi pulled up. My heart stopped. It wasn't Julian's car. It was a taxi. The door opened, and out stepped Allison.
She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, like she was some kind of movie star trying to be incognito. She looked left. She looked right. She hurried up the walkway. The front door opened before she even rang the bell. Julian was there. He pulled her inside and slammed the door shut. I checked the time. 10:17 a.m.
I took a sip of coffee. My hands were shaking. Just a little. Not from fear, from anticipation. I gave them time. I knew Julian. He wasn't a man of patience. But I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to think they had gotten away with it. I opened the app on my phone that connected to the digital recorder I'd hidden. It had a Bluetooth range that just barely reached the park if the wind was right. It flickered, then connected. The audio was crackly, but I heard them. Finally gone. God, I thought she'd never leave. That was Allison. Forget about her. Look at you. You look amazing. That was Julian. I heard the sound of clothes rustling. I heard the bed springs creak. My bed springs. Wait, Allison said. Did you bring the... You know. It's in the car. I'll go get it. Hurry, Dad. I've been waiting for this all week. I watched from the bushes as the side door opened. Julian ran out to the garage in his robe. He disappeared inside. A moment later, he came running back out, clutching the tube. The tube of glue. He ran back inside. The door locked. I looked at my watch. 10:30 a.m.
I waited 5 more minutes. I wanted to make sure they used it. I wanted to make sure there was no going back. At 10:35 a.m., I heard it through the app. First, laughter. Then, the wet, rhythmic sounds that made my stomach churn. And then, a pause. Julian? Why does it feel sticky? It's just a new brand, baby. Relax. No, it's really sticky. It's drying fast. Julian, stop. I can't. What do you mean you can't? Pull out. I'm trying. It's stuck. Allison, it's stuck. The panic in their voices was music. It was a dark, twisted symphony. And I was the conductor. Ow! You're hurting me. Get off. I can't get off. My skin. Oh God, it's burning. What is this? I stood up in the bushes. I brushed the dirt off my knees. It's showtime, I whispered. I walked quickly to the back of the house, staying low under the fence line. I reached the flower bed under the kitchen window. I found the fishing line attached to the brick. I took a deep breath. I thought of my bakery. I thought of my son's sad eyes. I thought of 40 years of lies. I yanked the line. I heard the clank of the brick hitting the ground. I heard the faint click of the gas knob turning inside. I waited 30 seconds. Then I saw it, the flicker of the pilot light catching the burner. I walked back to the front of the house and crossed the street, back to the safety of Mrs. Peterson's porch. 10 minutes later, the black smoke started to curl out of the kitchen window.
It wasn't a fire yet, just heavy, greasy smoke from the overheating oil. Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor 2 doors down, was the first to see it. "Fire!" she screamed, dropping her watering can. "Oh my God! Juliet's house is on fire!" I stood in the shadows and watched as Mr. Miller pulled out his phone. I knew exactly who he was calling. He wasn't calling the police. He was calling 911. And I knew exactly who would be on the first truck out of the station. My son, the fire chief. The trap was sprung, the rats were caught, and the
exterminator was on his way.
The sound of a fire siren is something you feel in your teeth before you hear it with your ears. It's a vibration, a low, growing moan that turns into a scream. I stood on Mrs. Peterson's porch, hidden behind a trellis of climbing ivy, clutching my chest. My heart was beating in time with those sirens. Thump, thump, thump. It took 6 minutes. 6 minutes is a long time when you're waiting for your world to explode. Inside my house, the smoke from the burning oil was doing its job. I could see it billowing out the kitchen window now, thick, gray, and greasy. It wasn't a raging inferno, but from the street, it looked like Juliet's oven was baking its last loaf. Then the red truck turned the corner. It was a monster of a machine, lights flashing, air horn blasting to clear the way, and right there in the front seat I saw him. My Daniel. He was already geared up, helmet on, jaw set tight. He looked like a warrior riding into battle, and in a way, he was. He just didn't know the enemy wasn't the fire. The enemy was the man who gave him his last name and the woman who wore his ring. The truck screeched to a halt in front of the hydrant. Let's go, move it," Daniel roared, jumping out before the wheels even stopped rolling. I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it almost brought me to my knees. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered into the collar of my hoodie. "I'm so sorry you have to see this, but it's the only way." Neighbors were gathering now.
Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Miller, the young couple from the blue house. They were all standing on the sidewalk, phones out, faces a mixture of horror and excitement. Tragedy is a spectator sport these days, honey. Daniel ran up the driveway, flanked by 2 other firefighters, big men, carrying axes and a Halligan bar. "Mom!" Daniel screamed at the house. "Mom, are you in there?" He thought I was home. He thought I was trapped. He didn't wait for an answer. He ran to the front door. Wham! The axe hit the wood. My beautiful oak door. The one Julian had refinished 20 years ago. Wham! Splinters flew. Wham! The lock gave way with a sickening crunch. Daniel kicked the door open and smoke poured out into the entryway. It was thick, stinging smoke from the burnt canola oil. "Fire department, call out!" Daniel yelled, disappearing into the gray haze. I was still listening on my phone app, the earbud hidden in my ear. The connection was breaking up a bit because of the interference, but I heard it. I heard the moment the script flipped. Daniel and his men headed for the kitchen, where the smoke was thickest. They had the hoses ready. One of the men shouted, "It's a grease fire on the stove! I've got it!" He sprayed a burst of chemical suppressant. The fire, what little there was of it, was out in 2 seconds. "Clear!" the man shouted. "Kitchen is clear! It was just a pot!" But then the screaming started again. It came from the bedroom down the hall. "Help! "Oh God, help us." It was Allison. Her voice was high, shrill, bordering on hysterical. "In here! We're in here!" Julian bellowed. Daniel froze. I could practically hear him freeze through the audio feed. "Dad," he whispered. "Allison." He turned. I saw the shadow of his helmet moving through the living room window. He was heading toward the master bedroom. "Now, honey, you have to understand something about industrial superglue. When it sets hard. It doesn't have give. It doesn't have mercy. And when you bond skin to skin, well, it becomes one piece of flesh." Julian and Allison had realized about 10 minutes ago that they weren't just stuck. They were fused. They had tried to pull apart. I heard the sobbing on the audio earlier. Every time they moved, it tore at them.
It was a physical agony to match their moral rot. Daniel reached the bedroom door. It was closed. He didn't knock. He didn't ask politely. He is a fireman. When people are screaming, he acts. He kicked the door open. Bang! The door swung wide and hit the wall. For a second, there was silence. Absolute, heavy silence. The kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off, before the dust settles. Then, Daniel's voice. It wasn't a scream. It was a sound I'd never heard from him before. It was a sound like a wounded animal. What the hell is this? I wasn't in the room, but I can paint you a picture, honey. My bed, my sanctuary. Julian was on his back.
Allison was on top of him. They were tangled in the sheets, sweating, red-faced, terrified. They were naked, and they were crying. "Daniel!" Allison shrieked. "Daniel, help! Don't look! Just help!" "Dad!" Daniel choked out. "Dad, what are you doing?" Julian, to his credit, or his shame, tried to cover Allison with a pillow, but he couldn't reach it. His arms were pinned by her position. "Daniel, son, listen to me," Julian stammered, his voice shaking. "It's not what it looks like. We got stuck. Something happened." "Stuck?" Daniel stepped into the room. "You're naked in my mother's bed with my wife?" "We can't move," Allison sobbed. It burns like fire. Someone put glue on us. Daniel, please, it hurts." Behind Daniel, the other two firefighters crowded into the doorway. "Chief, is everyone—" The firefighter stopped. "Holy mother of—" the man whispered. That was the moment the dam broke. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't punch his father. He stumbled back, bumping into the doorframe. He ripped his helmet off and threw it on the floor. "Get out," he whispered to his men. "Get out of here." "But Chief, they said they're stuck," the firefighter said, his eyes wide, trying not to look at the train wreck on the bed, but unable to look away. "If it's glue, we can't just leave them." "I said, get out," Daniel roared, his voice cracking. But it was too late. The commotion had drawn the neighbors closer to the broken front door.
The smoke had cleared enough to see into the hallway. "What's going on?" Mrs. Henderson yelled from the lawn. "Is Juliet okay?" And then Julian made the mistake of shouting back. "Close the front door. Don't let them see." But the door was broken. It wouldn't close. I decided it was time for my entrance. I lowered my hood. I took off my sunglasses. I smoothed my dress. I walked out from Mrs. Peterson's porch and crossed the street. I walked slowly, deliberately. I put on the face of a terrified woman who had just rushed home from a trip. "Daniel," I screamed, running up the driveway. "Daniel, is the house gone?" The crowd parted for me. "It's Juliet. She's back." I ran up the steps past the splintered wood of my front door. I walked into the hallway. The smell was a mix of burnt oil, sweat, and the sharp chemical tang of the glue. I saw Daniel leaning against the wall in the hallway, his face buried in his hands. He was shaking. "Mom?" He looked up. His eyes were red, wet, and wild. "Mom, don't go in there. Please, don't go in there." I stopped. I looked at him. I reached out and touched his cheek. "Is the fire out, Daniel?" I asked calmly. "There was no fire, Mom," he rasped. It was a trap or something, I don't know." "Who is screaming, Daniel?" I asked, looking toward the bedroom. "Mom, please."
I walked past him. I had to play the part. I had to witness it so they knew I saw them. I walked to the bedroom doorway. The two firefighters stepped aside, looking at their boots, their faces beet red with secondhand embarrassment. I looked into the room. Julian stopped talking when he saw me. Allison stopped crying and buried her face in Julian's neck. We locked eyes, me,
And my husband, he looked small. He looked pathetic. He didn't look like the man who was going to steal my bakery. He looked like a trapped rat. "Juliet," he croaked. "Juliet, help us, please. Call an ambulance." I stood there for a long moment. I looked at the sheets, my wedding gift sheets. I looked at the bedside table where the empty bottle of lube sat, mocking them. "I thought you were watching the game, Julian," I said softly. "Juliet, please," he begged. "We are in agony." "And you, Allison?" I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. "I thought you were working late." "Mom!" "I'm sorry," Allison wailed, her voice muffled. "I'm so sorry." I turned to the firefighters standing in the hall. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice steady as a rock, "it seems we have a medical emergency. My husband and his daughter-in-law seem to have found themselves in a sticky situation. Please remove them from my house." "Remove them, ma'am?" the firefighter asked. "But they can't walk." "Then carry them," I said. "Wrap them in a sheet. Drag them. I don't care. Just get this filth out of my bedroom."
Daniel looked at me. He saw something in my eyes. Maybe he saw the strength. Maybe he saw the lack of surprise. But he didn't say a word. He just stood up straight, wiped his face, and put his helmet back on. "You heard her," Daniel said, his voice cold and commanding. "Load them up. Call the paramedics. Tell them we have 2 patients, fused together." The next 20 minutes were a circus. The paramedics arrived. They tried to figure out how to move them. There was no way to separate them there. It required surgery or solvents they didn't have. They had to lift them together. It was awkward. It was clumsy. Julian screamed in pain as they shifted his weight. Allison cried out as her skin pulled. They wrapped them in a yellow blanket, but it didn't cover much. They looked like a 2-headed caterpillar. And then came the walk of shame. They wheeled the stretcher out the front door. The crowd on the lawn had doubled. Phones went up in the air like a salute. Flashbulbs went off. "Oh my God," someone shouted. "Is that Julian? Who is he with?" That's Daniel's wife." The gasp that went through the crowd sucked the air right out of the neighborhood. "Father and daughter-in-law. Disgusting. Look at them, they're stuck." Mr. Miller was recording the whole thing. "This is going viral," I heard him mutter. I stood on the porch, next to Daniel. I didn't hide. I didn't cry. I stood tall.
Daniel watched them load his wife and father into the ambulance. He didn't look away. He watched every second of it. He was burning the image into his brain, cauterizing the wound so it would never heal wrong. When the ambulance doors closed and it drove away, siren off this time, there was no rush for this kind of injury. The silence returned. The neighbors looked at us. They didn't know what to say. What do you say to a man whose wife just left with his father in a glue-bound embrace? Daniel turned to me. He looked at the broken door. He looked at the smoke stains on the ceiling. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. I looked at him. I could have lied. I could have played the victim a little longer. But he was my son, and he deserved the truth. Or at least, a version of it he could handle right now. "I knew they were lying to us, Daniel," I said. "I just didn't know they would be stupid enough to use the wrong bottle." He looked at me for a long time. Then, he let out a short, bitter laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who has lost everything but the irony. "The wrong bottle," he repeated. "Right." He put his arm around me. "Come on, Mom. You can't stay here tonight. The fumes are too strong. Let's go to a hotel." "No," I said. "I'm not leaving my house. This is my house.
They are gone. I'm staying. Mom, help me clean up the mess, Daniel, I said. And then, we are going to call a lawyer. He nodded. Yeah, we are. We walked back inside. The house smelled terrible, but underneath the smell of smoke and glue, I could smell something else. The air was clearing. The rot was gone. It was going to take a lot of bleach to clean that bedroom, and maybe a priest, but the worst was over. Or so I thought. Because the hospital, oh honey, the hospital was Act 2, and I had one little surprise left in my purse.
Hospitals have a smell, don't they? It's not just the antiseptic or the floor wax. It's the smell of secrets. It's the smell of prayers whispered in waiting rooms and the sharp, metallic scent of regret. Welcome back, honey. I hope you're sitting comfortable, because if you thought the lawn of my house was a circus, wait until you hear about the emergency room. Daniel drove us to the county hospital in silence. He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white as bone. He hadn't changed out of his turnout gear, just taken off the heavy jacket. He smelled like smoke and burnt oil, the smell of my revenge. When we walked through the sliding glass doors of the ER, the silence that fell over the waiting room was heavier than a wet wool coat. People looked up from their magazines, nurses stopped typing, a janitor leaned on his mop and stared. They knew who we were. Mr. Miller's video had gone viral. It had been viewed 50,000 times in the hour it took to transport them. We were famous, honey, but not the kind of famous you want to be. We were the sideshow, the punchline. Mrs. Roberts? A young doctor came out. He looked exhausted, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm Dr. Evans. I've been attending to your husband and the young lady. Are they separated, doctor? I asked, my voice trembling just the right amount. I clutched my purse tight. That purse was heavy. It held more than just tissues. We managed to separate them, doctor.
Evans sighed, rubbing his temples. It required a potent solvent and, well, a scalpel. They have significant skin abrasions, raw skin, burns from the chemical reaction of the adhesive. They are in a lot of pain. Can I see them? I asked. I need to give my husband his personal items. They're in room 304. We've applied a topical numbing agent, but the nurse is stepping out to get more bandages. You can go in for a moment. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at the floor, his jaw working. I'll wait here, Mom, he said quietly. I can't look at them yet. You take your time, baby, I said. I won't be long. I walked down the hallway, room 304. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. There they were. 2 hospital beds, pushed to opposite sides of the room, but the air between them was thick with hatred. Julian was lying on his stomach, a sheet draped over his lower half. He was groaning into his pillow. Allison was on her side, weeping softly, her back bandaged. They looked up when I entered. Juliet, Julian rasped. He sounded weak, broken. Juliet, water, please. I walked over to the bedside table. There was a pitcher of water, and there was a tube of medical ointment the nurse had left, lidocaine gel, for the pain. Of course, Julian, I said soothingly. I'm here. I poured him a glass of water. He drank it greedily, spilling it down his chin. Where is Daniel? He asked, wiping his mouth. Is he furious? He's heartbroken, Julian, I said simply, which is worse. I looked over at Allison. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was curled up in a ball of misery. Juliet, Julian whispered,
The pain, it's unbearable. The doctor said the numbing cream would help, but it's wearing off. Can you put some more on? The nurse is taking forever." I looked at the tube of lidocaine on the table. Then I touched my purse. "Now, honey, do you remember when I packed my bag for Nashville? I told you I packed my black dress, but I also packed a few other essentials, including a tube of gourmet, extra hot English mustard, the kind that clears your sinuses from across the room, the kind that burns like hellfire if you put it on a sandwich, let alone on raw, abraded skin. I had emptied a tube of hemorrhoid cream weeks ago and filled it with that yellow fire, just in case. I didn't know how I would use it, but I knew I wanted to. Preparation meets opportunity. That's what luck is." "Of course, honey," I said, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Let me help you." I turned my back to them for a split second, pretending to look for a tissue. I palmed the lidocaine tube and swapped it with the tube from my purse. They looked identical in the dim light. I squeezed a generous amount of the yellow paste onto a gauze pad. The smell of mustard was faint, masked by the overwhelming smell of hospital disinfectant and their own sweat. "This might sting for a second," I cooed.
But it will numb the pain right away. "Just do it," Julian groaned. "Please." I walked over to him. I pulled back the sheet just enough to see the angry red raw skin on his hip where he had been glued to our daughter-in-law. I slapped the gauze pad down, hard. "Ah," he flinched. "It's gold." "Hush now," I said. "Let it work." I walked over to Allison. "You too, sweetie? We don't want you suffering." She nodded weakly, desperate for relief. "Please." I applied the rest of the ointment to her back. "There," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "That should do the trick." I stepped back toward the door. "Juliet," Julian said, It feels warm. That means it's working." I smiled. "No," he said, shifting. It's really hot. It burns," Allison whimpered. "Ow, ow, it burns." "Give it a second," I said, reaching for the doorknob.
"Juliet!" Julian screamed suddenly, arching his back. "It's burning! What is that? It's like acid! Ow!" Allison shrieked, clawing at her bandages. "Get it off! Get it off!" The mustard was doing its job. It was seeping into that raw, broken skin, waking up every nerve ending with a chemical heat that makes a jalapeno look like a cucumber. "Oh dear," I said, opening the door. "I must have grabbed the wrong tube. My bad." I walked out into the hallway just as the nurse came running with fresh bandages. "What's happening?" she yelled, rushing past me. "I think they're having a reaction to the guilt," I said calmly. "Or maybe it's the mustard." "The what?" She ran into the room. The screaming was deafening. It echoed down the tiled corridor, a harmony of agony that sounded better than any choir I'd ever heard. I walked back to the waiting room. Daniel was standing up now, looking toward the noise. "Mom?" he asked. "What's that screaming?" "Karma, baby," I said. "Karma has a kick." I sat down next to him and opened my purse again. I took out the manila envelope Mr. Vance had given me, the one with the financial documents, the one with the forensic accounting of how Julian tried to steal the bakery, and the divorce papers my lawyer had drawn up yesterday. "Daniel," I said, my voice serious now. The fun and games were over. "We need to go in there, not to help them, but to finish this." "Finish it?" Daniel looked at the envelope. "What is that?"
"Freedom," I said. The screaming in room 304 had subsided to whimpering as the nurses frantically washed the mustard off their skin. We walked in. The room smelled like a hot dog stand and antiseptic. Julian was panting, his face pale. Allison was sobbing into her pillow. "You," Julian pointed a shaking finger at me. "You crazy bitch! You put mustard on me!" "I put mustard on a hot dog, Julian," I said coldly. "Seems appropriate." I threw the envelope onto his bed. It landed with a heavy thud.
"What is this?"
he wheezed. "That," I said, "is proof. Proof that you embezzled $40,000 from Juliet's oven over the last 2 years. Proof that you forged my signature on the loan documents. Proof that you and Allison were conspiring to bankrupt the business and steal this house." The room went deadly silent. Even Allison stopped crying. Daniel stepped forward. He looked at the papers. He looked at his father. "Dad," Daniel's voice was barely a whisper, "is that true? You stole from Mom. You stole from us." Julian tried to sit up, but the pain forced him back down. "Daniel, listen. It was business. The bakery was failing." "The bakery had its best year in a decade," I snapped, "until you started draining the accounts. And you," I turned to Allison, "you were the bookkeeper. You cooked the books. You thought you were so smart. Get the old hag out of the house, wasn't it?" Allison turned white as the sheets. I didn't mean." "Daniel," I said, turning to my son, "they weren't just sleeping together. They were robbing us. They were going to leave you with nothing. No wife, no father, no inheritance, no home." Daniel looked at Allison. He looked at the woman he had married, the woman he wanted to have children with. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just looked at her with a disgust so profound it chilled the air in the room. "Daniel, baby, please," Allison begged, reaching a hand out. "I made a mistake. I was confused. We can fix this." Daniel looked at her hand like it was a poisonous snake. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow," he said. His voice was flat, dead. "I want you out of my house by tonight. Burn your clothes. I don't want to see anything you ever touched." "But I have nowhere to go," she wailed. "Go with him," Daniel pointed at his father. "You deserve each other." Then Daniel turned to Julian. "And you," he said, "you're not my father. My father died a long time ago. You're just a thief who got caught." "Daniel's son," Julian started to cry. Real tears this time. Tears of a man who realizes he has lost the only thing that really matters, his legacy. "Don't call me son," Daniel said. He turned to me. "Mom, are we done here?" "Almost," I said. I looked at Julian one last time. "Sign the papers, Julian," I said. "Sign the house over. Sign your half of the bakery over. If you do, I won't press criminal charges for the embezzlement."
"I won't send you to jail at 70 years old." His eyes widened. "Jail?" "Grand larceny," I said. "Fraud, conspiracy. Mr. Vance has it all. I can send you to prison for 10 years. Or you can sign everything over, take your little girlfriend, and disappear." He looked at the papers. He looked at the mustard stains on his skin. He looked at the son who wouldn't look at him. He knew he was beaten. "Give me a pen," he whispered. I handed him a pen. He signed. His hand shook, but he signed. He signed away the house. He signed away the business. He signed away his life. I took the papers back and checked the signature. Perfect. "Goodbye, Julian," I said. "I hope she was worth it." I turned to Allison. "And honey, you might want to get that skin looked at. Mustard stains." I took Daniel's arm. "Let's go, Chief. We have dough to rise." We walked out of that hospital room and didn't look back. Behind us, the sounds of sobbing started up again, but they sounded faint, distant, like a bad memory fading in the rear view mirror.
We walked out into the cool night air. The stars were out. The viral video was still circulating. Millions of views now. People would talk about this for years. They would make jokes. They would laugh. But as I walked to the truck with my son, I didn't feel like a joke. I felt like a woman who had just walked through fire and come out holding the gold. But the story isn't quite over, honey, because surviving the fire is one thing.
Rebuilding from the ashes, that's where the real work begins. And let me tell you, 6 months can change a life just as much as 6 minutes can.